Trusty ape. Fucking Murphy's Law, am I right? Uh, oh my goodness. Excuse me. I'm gonna try to keep this stream somewhat brief. That is by design. Um, I'm gonna go do some other shit, healthy shit. But welcome one, welcome all. Thank you to all who join. Especially the newer folks who are coming, but especially the older friends of the channel who keep coming back. Eventually, it'll work. I'm gonna try to be again brief and very intentional with this stream. So on the next one, I will probably go and read some comments and do some housekeeping and stuff, potentially, with any luck. But for today, I figured I would do this. Theoretically, has been a long-time friend of the channel and did a video about a month ago that was in my watch later list. Just because I was trying to finish it myself, but I did get part of the ways into it. And Theo had come on previously and asked me to review that video since it is on the list. And so that's what I'm going to try to do here today. We'll see exactly where we go with this. I don't think it's going to be too much of an intense critique on the substance of the argument. We'll see where we go with that. But I'm really going to be reacting to more like the structure, how it is explained in the video, and where I think maybe those arguments are compelling, whether or not I believe that myself, right? And so I really think that's going to be more of my intent in reviewing this today, but again, we'll see where it goes. I don't want to necessarily put a lot of more like deeper research into the topic than I have to. Maybe if I think some things could be whether they've been explained sufficiently or could be more sufficiently explained might be a thing. But again, this is a friendly endeavor. Theo, thanks for the request. I always appreciate it. I do video requests generally, as long as it's not some there are probably some limits, some boundaries I would draw there, but this seems like a perfectly good one. And yeah, so we'll jump into that. Thanks for joining. And if it's still pulled up here, I kept the format as it was. Hope there's no complaints about that. But I may change it up again in the future. Shoot, I have to go back to the thing. I'm doing it wrong. Happy hump day. Hope everybody's having a great week so far. Mine is getting better. So this is from Theoretically's channel, Secular Ethical Realism. And we'll probably have to back up because I'm into it a little bit.
Well, agreement should exist.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? This is Theo coming in with my little presentation on ethical realism. Let's make this smaller. Yeah. As you might hear, I'm from Switzerland, so please bear with my terrible Swiss-German accent. I had to translate all of this, and I will totally butcher some of these words.
That's all right. And I like the subtitle here, Why Human Rights Are a Necessity and Not an Opinion.
In the audience in many atheists, humanists YouTube channels. I'm always primarily interested in the friendship aspect and finding like-minded, reasonable people, and the education and spreading of secular humanism on these channels. I'm not so much interested in any religious mythology or impractical arguments for God discussions. but very much in discussing where we get fairness and justice from. I won't argue over personal opinion and taste with you, but about objective ethics. These ethics I'm presenting.
So that's a tough one right there, because while I might agree on that, a lot of people will argue that objective ethics are impossible. But we'll see what the argument in the video is going to be. Um, I'm sure we will address that. Oh, welcome, Spooky Pet here. Good to see you. But we'll see. Okay, I apologize for my scratchy throat. I'll try to mute more often if I have to.
Today are of course not my invention, but the combination and result of many thinkers in the spirit of the Enlightenment and secular humanism. It's modern secular natural law theory. It serves both believers of all kinds and atheists alike. I do this to address a big problem I see. We are constantly told that morality is just a matter of perspective, cultural consensus, or subjective feeling, and that there are no objective ethics. I'm here to demonstrate why that's wrong and problematic, and to present the modern empirical evolution of the natural rights tradition. Stripped off the old religious metaphysics, only looking at the hard facts.
Yeah, I agree. I think the natural rights position, as they use it, seems to require an explanation, a supernatural explanation for where rights are derived from, when that's contradictory to the concept that the rights are derived naturally from states of nature, right?
Ethics is not a social construct, but a structural necessity based on what we are as human beings. Before we dive deep into it, many people might ask, isn't this just impractical philosophical masturbation? And why they should care at all about meta-ethics while the world is burning? A legit question, but this is what we're talking about and why it matters. A classic Fox News line. The left is actively trying to rearrange our politics, our culture, our courts and our schools to align with their radical woke views on sex, gender and race.
It's funny because when you take the outrage language out of there, I mean, it's kind of true. Yeah, we are trying to progressivize institutions. Crazy, I know.
If morality is reduced to mere opinion, we lose the rational ground to defend anyone. Human rights become preferences. Equality becomes a preference. Freedom becomes a preference. Tolerance becomes a preference. If your opinion of justice is a minority against the bigot or fascist majority, of course the bigot fascist side with more power wins, you call it a day and fair game then? No. We need a standard that is independent of what anyone happens to believe.
Yeah, not to mention there's the counter narrative that cultural conservatism is somehow morally superior is in of itself based on sentiments, right? It's based on their feelings.
And that's exactly the definition of...
See, I'm trying not to, but I'm doing it. I'm like, yes, I agree.
Moral realism. Here, ethical realism claims that there exist moral truths, objective ethical principles that are independent of any individual's beliefs, feelings, or preferences. Objective in this context does not mean non-subjective or mind-independent, in the sense of not requiring a mind of a subject to discover it. A brain is definitely required to find ethics.
Yeah, not just the finding out of ethics, right? You know, based on probably numerous experiences, not a singular one, but the fact of experiencing moral action, right? Or the feeling of being morally slighted in some way requires the mind to first even observe it and register the feeling, right?
Instead, it means belief independent. Ethical claims can be true or false regardless of what individuals or cultures happen to think about them. This immediately distinguishes ethical realism from subjectivism or expressivism, where moral claims are reduced to attitudes or emotional expressions. Ethics, in this sense, is not about describing what people believe, but about evaluating whether those beliefs are justified according to non-arbitrary standards. For clarity, as there are these two different layers, I will maintain a distinction between the two.
Yeah, that's the only thing I started to look up a little bit before I got in here just to refresh. And then, according to, of course, my AI overview is like, oh, there's no like functional, it says they are functionally synonymous terms in philosophy. But I actually agree with Theo here. And my understanding is morality is generally more often based on preference, but there's an underlying like ethical standard or justification, and the ethic itself um, is is um, is more of I think that's a better term. You say ethical realism rather than moral realism. I think you're making a distinction based on what we know to be true universally people versus how people might perceive that across time and across cultures. Um, yeah, if that made any sense.
Therefore, variation in morality does not imply absence of objective ethics. It only reflects variation in compliance, understanding, institutional development, and the personal cultural prioritization. I shouldn't have to say it, but those are the most common misconceptions I hear people make about the concept. Ethical realism does not claim or imply that ethical truths should be obvious and fully intuitively accessible to everyone, that moral agreement should exist across cultures or history, that ethical principles should have been always respected in practice, or that moral progress is either automatic or linear. Disagreement is therefore not evidence against objectivity. Two examples. The existence of flat earthers does not hurt the validity of the fact that our Earth is round. And young Earth creationists' disagreement does not cast doubt on the scientifically established age of our planet. Persistent disagreement does not undermine objective truth. Likewise, ethical disagreement does not imply ethical relativism. Ethical realism is also not a claim of personal authority. It does not say some.
And I think we can even further clarify, maybe in terms of when we talk about ethics and we apply it um, to things like medicine and business, like medical practice and business practices, whereas our morality. So I would distinguish that versus like the way that I would expect my sibling or my parent to treat me. Um, it, and compare that to the way I would expect like a doctor or teacher to treat me. And there's not, I think most people feel a strong sense of injustice, potentially if like, say a teacher was to discipline their child, they'd say in a certain way, they would say, that's not your job, that's my job as the parent. And you violated um, a moral code, right? But using the same principle ethically that I would use as a parent is not okay for you to do that as a teacher to my child, if that makes any sense.
People simply know better, but that there are non-arbitrary justification standards, independent of opinion, and accessible to all rational people to be discovered. And this brings us to the core of the framework, starting with the first pillar, metaphorically represented by the naked human leg of the Colossus, human vulnerability. It is an inescapable empirical fact about biology that we can be broken, traumatized, and killed. Because we are vulnerable, any society that allows unchecked dominance and arbitrary violence will inevitably collapse into chaos and destruction. Therefore, protecting this vulnerability is not an optional preference. It is a functional necessity for human coexistence. From this follows the natural rights constraint. We see this architecture clearly when we look at modern human rights tradition. It is not a collection of abstract philosophical concepts. It is an empirical, ethical, legal practice. Historical declarations of rights are the concrete monuments built upon these pillars. The second pillar, the steel man leg of the colossus, is our nature as reason-giving agents. Humans do not merely react to brute force. We demand justifications. If you restrict my freedom, you owe me a non-arbitrary reason. This is an inescapable feature of human interaction. A state or an individual cannot claim legitimacy through raw violence alone. True legitimacy can only be found in reasons that survive rational, reciprocal scrutiny. From this follows the justification constraint.
And we can demonstrate that throughout history, that no matter how powerful the civilization is, if they do not meet this criterion for being legitimized and recognized by their constituents, then the society inevitably collapses.
In a perfect world, these two pillars would guide us in proper conflict management, and there would be no need for violent conflicts. Unfortunately, in reality, coercion is a permanent background condition of social life, and ethical principles require institutional enforcement. This leads to the necessity of a coercive authority, a state, a violence monopoly. However, this authority is only legitimate under strict constraints: protection of rights from Pillar 1 and justification constraints from Pillar 2. This creates...
Stupid Prism. I just realized it didn't change my hashtags. I changed the hashtag to review, but it still says react on my stream. Well, yeah, that's fine. And I'll tag Theo shortly after we conclude. It just won't let me do it until after the stream. So, but I will also tag Theo's channel there.
Can be called a Leviathan constraint. The state is justified only insofar as it prevents domination and forces non-arbitrary rules, rather than becoming a source of arbitrary domination itself. Human rights are the structural realization that the state's monopoly of violence, our Leviathan, is only legitimate as long as it operates within the strict boundaries of protecting human vulnerability and upholding rational justification. Let's put this framework to the use. This realism is a sharp ethical compass. 3 examples. Take torture. Cognitive science thoroughly debunks it. Torture does not extract truth. Under extreme trauma, human agents will confess to absolutely anything, just to end the agony. It is a complete breakdown of rational justification and purely arbitrary cruelty. Take the death penalty. Psychology and forensics prove that human justice is prone to error, because wrongful convictions are a documented reality, and forcing an irreversible lethal punishment is inherently irrational and violates the state's duty to protect our individual and collective vulnerability. This same empirical compass completely dismantles cultural relativism, our 3rd example. When critics claim that equal protection for marginalized groups is just a modern Western political trend, science exposes the fallacy. Biology, neuroscience, and anthropology prove that all human beings, regardless of sex, gender, orientation, or heritage, share the exact same fundamental vulnerability and the exact same capacity for reason. Therefore, denying any group equal rights is not a cultural difference. It is an act of arbitrary harm that fails rational scrutiny. By grounding
Yeah, and once again, I think we can have the take the position that historically, anytime we see that, by definition, these groups are prone to, I would say, prone to having injustice committed against them, right? Like, that is the state of things. We recognize that they are marginalized because the system does not work in their favor inherently. And so then we either seek out to empower those individuals or try to adapt the system to be more equitable, right?
these practical applications in empirical facts and scientific observations, rather than metaphysical dogmas, this framework naturally bridges into the next crucial step: its capacity for constant review, adjustment, and progress. Because this framework is grounded in empirical facts and social sciences rather than unchanging religious dogmas, it is inherently dynamic. It is open to improvement and revision.
Hey, Cher, good to see you. Hope you're doing well today. Happy hump day.
If neuroscience or anthropology discover new truths about human nature and reasoning tomorrow, our ethical operating system can adjust. We do not claim an unchangeable cosmic revelation. We claim a scientific, verifiable ethics framework that grows as our understanding of human nature progresses. Let's look at the first classical objections.
All right, here we go. And I thought that was very well put too. Yeah, it's an adaptive system, so it is changing as we get better information.
First, Hume's is-ought gap. The critic claims you cannot derive a value from a fact. Our response is clear. Constitutive facts about rational social agents inherently carry normative implications. The objection only works if you falsely assume that normativity is completely external to human nature. Second, Moore's open question argument. The critic asks, but is it really good? This objection only proves that ethical conclusions require solid justification. It does not prove that such justification is impossible. Simply repeating, but is it good, does not refute our argument. The burden remains on the critic to explain why our derivation fails.
So, I mean, I think this is pretty good philosophically. I think there might be a way to simplify these, maybe for more lay people. But I don't know if that's really necessary. But I mean, it could be useful if you wanted to do that. But no, I mean, I think overall, I agree. I don't have a lot of disagreement with that. Constitutive facts about rational and social agents carry normative implications. This objection only works if normativity is assumed to be entirely external to human nature. Yeah, because it could be a statement of fact about human nature, and that gets you back. So the is-ought question is, I think, kind of it's incomplete, because it's not like when you're talking about action and consequence, right? The mere fact of what is, if you perform that action, well, you have prior knowledge of the consequence, right? What is that consequence? And then you carry that into, other realms of, say, like empathy. What makes it normative? If I would not, have that done to me, I ought not do that to another. Um, but then you have to talk relationally. You can't just use this. So I think it's malformed, I would say. I don't know if anybody else has come to that, but just a thought.
Moving on to the next two classical objections. Third is the naturalistic fallacy. Critics assume nature is ethically irrelevant. We reject that. While arbitrary facts, like having kidneys, are irrelevant, the constitutive facts of being rational, vulnerable, and reason-giving are fundamentally relevant. If these facts are correctly identified.
Oh, and to clarify, wait, if I went too far afield there, on the last one, I was saying that David Hume's argument I think was malformed, and yes, I I read it a long time ago and stuff. I basically understand it. Not I wasn't that wasn't my critique of Theo there. Sorry, just in case we got confused.
Ethical obligations naturally follow. The dispute is simply whether our derivation is sound. Fourth, evolutionary debunking. These critics say morality is just an evolutionary survival trick, not truth. Our response? Evolution explains how we got our brains and capacities, but it does not invalidate the rational conclusions we reach with them. If evolution invalidated moral truth, it would destroy the validity of science and human reason themselves. Now, let's evaluate our rival moral theories and their shortcomings. First are the group of reductionist accounts, like subjectivism, emotivism, or Hobbesian instrumentalism. They try to reduce ethics to internal emotions or strategic survival. While they can explain what people want or do, they fail to explain why reasons are binding, why justification overrules personal preference, and why moral disagreement is deeper than just a difference in taste. Normativity collapses into mere psychology. Second, eliminativist accounts, or error theory. They claim no moral facts exist at all. But to make that claim, they must rely on logic, reasoning, and standard critique. They are actively denying normativity while completely presupposing it. It is a textbook performative contradiction. They attempt a rational critique while stripping themselves of all normative authority. Let's look at the remaining two rival approaches. The third are aggregative accounts, like utilitarianism. They try to define ethics by maximizing collective welfare. The fatal failure is they cannot secure individual human rights. They permit sacrificing an individual for the group benefit. People become mere numbers in an optimization function, violating the rule that justification must be addressed to each affected agent, not just the collective outcome.
Yeah, I never did get Travis Pangburn's book, but I think he did end up publishing that or something. But I always found that a little fishy in his argument for what he called maximized well-being. I don't know how he's refined that argument, but when I used to hear about it a long time ago, I think, well, then you're always going to have some, some uh, some portion of your population is never going to, is always going to have to, yeah, be like sacrificed or displaced or whatever in order to maximize the well-being, and like what portion is acceptable and how do you try to mitigate for that like as much as possible. And I don't know. I haven't listened to him enough recently to know if we got satisfactory answers for those questions. Interesting to think about.
And finally, the fourth, procedural
Same with like a T-GEMS model, I think.
accounts, like legal positivism or majoritarianism. They claim a law is valid simply because it followed the proper process or majority will. But procedures only generate decisions, not moral legitimacy. History repeatedly proves that legality and legitimacy diverge, as seen in slavery, colonialism, segregation, just to name a few. Even the legal positivist Gustav Radbruch, after witnessing the horrendous Nazi regime, famously stated that extremely unjust laws ceases to be law. Procedural accounts ultimately require deeper, substantive standards of justice that a procedure alone can never generate. To sum it all up, here is our unified diagnosis. All rival frameworks fail because they try to ground ethics in psychology, elimination, aggregation, or mere procedure. None of them address what is truly essential, the constitutive conditions of rational, vulnerable, reason-giving agents who demand non-arbitrary justification. In contrast, secular natural rights realism anchors ethics firmly in rational agency, human vulnerability, and our social interdependence. From this empirical foundation, a clear logical chain follows. The need for non-arbitrary justification creates rights, which create absolute constraints on domination, setting a permanent limit on majoritarian or strategic override. Sounds complicated, but all it really means is ethics is more important than someone's opinion, a majority vote, or pure imposition. That's all from the main part. Thank you for your time and attention.
All right. Well, I mean, generally, I think he.
This is the
Come
Dyson
on.
Supersonic Travel. It's
Not what I
lightweight,
wanted.
compact,